So, cohort mates and Rabbi Patrick, I was working on a light ha-ha sermon about Judah, Vayigash, and becoming a moral person with integrity. And I was working through all of the important issues that could apply to in the current world we're living in. And I was about halfway through it. And then I participated in our daily minyan today. And one of our congregants, we always have a Devar Torah for about 5 minutes, gave a Devar Torah about the book of Numbers, and specifically numbers. And it was very funny. And I thought that as I watched all the faces of our minyan laughing, smiling, appreciating a Devar Torah that was humorous, it got me thinking that I was going to take a totally different approach to our assignment today. And that I was going to sermonize about humor. I don't think of myself as being very funny. And I've probably been accused of taking myself a little too seriously many, many times. So, Rabbi Patrick, you wanted me to take risks? You wanted us to take risks and be out of our comfort zone? Here goes nothing. Somewhere along the line, I heard someone say that starting a sermon with a joke was a good idea. So, here we go. A Jew is shipwrecked and finds himself alone on an island in the middle of the ocean. To pass the time, he first builds a house and then a synagogue. Eventually, after many years, he's constructed an entire town. One day he is rescued, but before he leaves the island, he shows his rescuers around, pointing out all the buildings he's made. Puzzled, the rescuers ask why, if there's only one of him, he's built 2 separate synagogues. Oh, that synagogue, the man sneers, pointing at one of the synagogues. That's the one I would never step foot in. Seems a pretty appropriate joke for the pluralistic rabbinic seminary. Culturally, Jews are very ambivalent about humor. At least the Jewish people is. Many Jews are funny, but the Jewish people, we are many good things. Intelligent, family-oriented, serious, committed, philanthropic, but funny, not in my list of our top 10 characteristics. Not so much. In fact, as long back as the late 13th century, Kalonymus ben Kalonymus, whose specialty was satire, and who wrote a famous parody of Purim in the style of a Talmudic tractate, wrote as follows: "The Jew is a luckless creature, for he must shun all jest and play, and must pore night and day over Mosaic and rabbinic lore, and books which he may think a bore. The Bible is not half enough. Commentaries there are, and other stuff, in which erudite he must be, in things particularly small, of no significance at all. And yet, some of our most important sources recognize the importance of laughter. In fact, in Genesis, we know that Sarah laughs when she learns that she will give birth and names her son Yitzchak because he brought laughter. And then there's an Aggadic story in the Talmud from Ta'anit 22a7. In the meantime, two brothers came to the marketplace. Elijah said to Rabbi Baroka, "These two also have a share in the world to come." Rabbi Baroka went over to the men and said to them, "What is your occupation?" They said to him, "We are jesters. We cheer up the depressed. Alternatively, when we see two people who have a quarrel between them, we strive to make peace. It is said that for this behavior, one enjoys the profits of his actions in this world, and yet his reward is not diminished in the world to come." So, I thought I would also share some excerpts or part of my Mignonaire's David Berman's Drash. Here we go. So, a very quick preamble. This Drash has no message or moral. It is just a bit of Judaic diversion. I used to accept the canard the Jews invented banking because the one job the Christians of the Middle Ages allowed our ancestors to have was to sit on benches, banco in Old Italian, and lend money. Over the years, however, I began to appreciate that we actually come by these skills and the adjacencies of accounting, investing, and finance by osmosis. In our sacred and interpretive texts, we basically enumerate everything endlessly throughout the year, year after year. Tribes, generations, lifespans, warriors, wanderers, plagues, blessings, curses, flocks, sacrificial offerings, donations, taxes, and what have you. We are told to count, to measure, to weigh, and to value just about everything, and to record it all. The subject suffuses the Tanakh. Indeed, just a few weeks ago, we began reading from the book of Numbers. And of course, since the inception of the oral Torah, the rabbinic sages have been able to extract remarkable, if remarkably esoteric, meaning from the endless quantification. So, today's drash is brought to you by the number 70, which appears 91 times in the Tanakh. Speaking of which, the first Greek translation of the Tanakh was called the Septuagint, actually a Latin contraction of a longer Greek phrase, meaning the translation of the 70, because it was believed to have been the product of 70 Hebrew scholars. In Exodus, Moses was commanded to bring 70 elders to Mount Sinai, and in this week's Parsha, Beha'alotecha, chapter 11, we learn that God appointed 70 elders as judges to assist Moses in the desert. The Great Sanhedrin, which is actually a Greek word meaning assembly, was accordingly composed of 70 elders, although Tractate Sanhedrin says it was 71, without quite explaining who was supposed to replace Moses. And from Genesis, we learn that 70 nations descended from Noah, which also explains why tradition teaches that after the Tower of Babel affair, the one original unknown language exploded into, yes, 70 languages. Genesis tells us that 70 members of Jacob's family entered Egypt. And Jeremiah tells us that the Babylonian exile lasted 70 years. It takes 70 years for a carob tree to bear fruit. I have no idea if these two ideas are related. and so on. You get the idea. But in difficult times, why is humor and laughter so important? It's so important because it keeps us in community. You really need a minion of sorts to do and experience humor. It's so important because it also allows us to let our egos relax and to laugh at ourselves and the insignificant things we sometimes think are so important. It's so important because laughter is one way of practicing mindfulness, of truly being present. So, as I progress towards my smicha and beyond, as we progress towards our smichas and beyond, we must always remember to be able to laugh at ourselves or a situation, and that is so important, including when a sermon falls flat, like perhaps this one is. According to Chassidut, Rebbe Nachman of Breslov believed as follows. He said that it seems impossible to achieve happiness without some measure of foolishness. One must resort to all sorts of joking and foolish things if this is the only way to attain happiness. I've always said that I would rather be happy than right. And maybe this sermon is a little bit of me that wants to find that part of myself, share it with others, and encourage others to find joy and humor. Shabbat Shalom.